look at that picture. I'm using my iPad that someone gave me to do this video. This is my 1891 white VS2B, which is a vibrating shuttle sewing machine. And this is still my grandson's quilt. And I'm way behind on getting it done in time, but fitting it in. Now, what I want to show you, and I'm hoping the iPad stays there, this is putting the quilt binding on. And this is a 2-inch wide satin blanket binding, the most wonderful thing ever created for any kind of a blanket. That satin feel at the end of a blanket is just wonderful. Now what I'm doing is I'm using red thread, even though this is blue, because my grandson is young and the primary colors are a good thing. But the reason I'm making the video is to show you that what I'm going to do is just do the first, I'm doing one side at a time. When you go to pin binding on, you might tend to say, oh, I can get the whole thing pinned and then zip around the quilt. And you can, but what happens when you stitch, and you can kind of see it right here, where this is a little bit of a gap. As I pull out the pins, this is going to ease in a little bit as I sew. And so a lot of times you end up using slightly more binding than you thought you were going to use. Now I'm going to go slow. I'm using the left side of the presser foot as a thread guide, as a seam guide. Okay, so here I'm at that first pin. You want to keep the whole quilt, no matter how big it is or little it is, very even. If you start to drift too close to the edge, change it when you see it. Don't worry if you've got a one crooked stitch showing up. You do not want to run off the edge. Now that gap that was there before is not now there, but I'm going to take this pin out and continue. And just because the quilt is cotton, the binding is polyester, you want to do it a little at a time is the point. So I will continue putting this binding on this way to the corner. And when I get to this first corner, and I've got the whole roll of binding kind of stuck under the quilt there, when I get to this first corner and I've got that stitched, I'm then going to fold this to turn it and do the second side. I'll make a mitered, it's called a mitered corner here. You kind of fold it in a triangle. And I will then stitch the second side. And I'll do that all the way around the quilt. I'll be stitching one side at a time. And it's just one of those things that if you take the extra time to do it that way, you're less likely to get to the end of the quilt and be 2 inches short. And then if you are 2 inches short at the end of the quilt, you are going to have to obviously cut a 2 or 3 inch piece of binding and stitch it together short ways and then put it in place. And it's better to just stitch as you go along, one side at a time, when you're adding a quilt binding.